They found her at the foot of the castle, a blackened, broken thing beside the ruin of her dragon. Hours before, she had been the swiftest terror in the sky, the Red Queen and her rider falling like wrath upon an army. Then 2 dragons fell upon her from above, one of them the oldest and largest monster in the world, and she did not run. An old woman of 55, knowing she could not win, turned her dragon to meet them anyway. When the smoke cleared, the Red Queen was torn to pieces upon the earth, and the woman, who by every law of the realm should have been the first queen of Westeros, lay dead beside her, never having worn a crown at all. Born in 74 AC, dead at Rook's Rest in 129 AC, twice denied the throne that was hers by right, and choosing in the end to die like a warrior rather than live as a footnote. This is the complete story of Rhaenys Targaryen. But was she a hero, a monster, or the queen who never was? Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries, heroes and monsters of Westeros. This is Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was. She was born in the year 74 AC, by tradition on the 7th day of the 7th moon, a lucky sevens birth for a child of the dragon. Her father was Prince Aemon Targaryen, eldest son and heir of the old King Jaehaerys the First, and his queen Alysanne, the Prince of Dragonstone, rider of the lean red dragon Caraxes. Her mother was Lady Jocelyn Baratheon of Storm's End, of the Storm Lord's proud line. And from that union came the single most important fact of her early life. Rhaenys was Aemon's only child, the only child of the king's eldest son. By every old law of inheritance, by the plain logic of primogeniture that placed her, and any children she might one day bear, at the very front of the line to one day rule the 7 kingdoms. Remember that. Everything that follows turns upon it. She did not look as her cousins looked. From her Baratheon mother, she took black hair, not the silver gold of Valyria, though her eyes were the deep purple of the dragon's blood. In her youth, she was reckoned a great beauty, black-haired and lilac-eyed, and beneath that beauty ran a fierce and fiery spirit. Clever, capable, proud, sharp of tongue, and utterly without fear. She was not a woman built to wait quietly in the shadow of lesser men. The realm would learn that, in time, the hardest way. At 13 years old, in 87 AC, she did a thing that marked her forever. There was a she-dragon in the dragon pit, scarlet of scale and pink of wing, her crest and claws bright as new copper. Men called her Meleys, the Red Queen, and she was counted among the swiftest dragons in all the world, said to outfly even great Caraxes and the monstrous Vhagar. Her former rider had died, and so Meleys sat unclaimed. Rhaenys went to her and made her own. From that day, the girl and the Red Queen were bound, and the realm had a princess who could fall from the sky with fire. In 90 AC, she was wed. Her husband was Lord Corlys Velaryon, Lord of the Tides, Master of Driftmark, and the most famous mariner in the history of Westeros. They called him the Sea Snake. In his younger days, aboard a great ship of his own design that bore that very name, Corlys had made 9 voyages to the ends of the known world, sailing past the Jade Gates to Yi Ti and Far Leng, returning each time with silk and spice and jade. By those voyages he had made House Velaryon richer than the Lannisters, richer than the Hightowers, the wealthiest house in all the realm, and himself the wealthiest man in the 7 kingdoms. So, here was the match. The senior blood of the dragon joined to the greatest fortune and the greatest fleet in Westeros. Together, Rhaenys and Corlys were a power that ambition itself could scarcely contain. In time, she gave him 2 children, a daughter named Laena, and a son named Laenor, and the years should have been bright before her. Then, in 92 AC, her father died. Prince Aemon was struck down by a crossbow bolt while putting down raiders in the Stormlands on the Isle of Tarth, and in a single moment, the whole shape of the world tilted. The king's heir was dead, and his heir's only child was Rhaenys. By the plain reading of the law, the next prince of Dragonstone should have come from Aemon's line, which meant Rhaenys, or the child she then carried in her belly. The lords of the realm even argued the point aloud, debating gravely whether the unborn boy they imagined in her womb might outrank a grown man. They called it the question of the boy in the belly. But old King Jaehaerys did not wait upon that question. He passed his dead son's daughter over entirely and named Aemon's younger brother, Prince Baelon the Brave, as the new heir to the Iron Throne. This was the first time, the first of two. A daughter set aside in favor of an uncle. A senior line steered away from the throne by the hand of the king himself. Many in the realm muttered that Jaehaerys had wronged her, that he had chosen a brother over his own granddaughter for no better reason than that she was a woman. And the irony, when it came, was almost cruel. Late that same year, the boy in the belly was born, and it was no boy at all. It was a girl, her daughter Laena. The argument that had passed her over was built upon a child who never existed. Rhaenys was perhaps 18 years old, and she had already been taught the first hard lesson of her life. The throne would not come to her, however right her claim. She would carry that grievance quietly for the rest of her days. 9 years passed. Then fate dealt the cards again. In 101 AC, Prince Baelon, the very man who had displaced her, died suddenly of a burst belly, an agony in the gut that no maester could cure. Once more the succession lay open, and this time the old king, weary and unwilling to choose alone again, did something unheard of. He summoned the lords of the whole realm to Harrenhal, to the largest gathering of nobles Westeros had ever seen. Hundreds of great lords and thousands of their followers camped about the haunted castle. History would call it the Great Council of 101. It came down, in the end, to 2. Rhaenys herself was considered, and her daughter Laena with her, and both were set aside on account of their sex, for being women. That left her son, Lord Velaryon, against Prince Viserys, the son of dead Baelon. And here, the realm split upon a question that would haunt it for a generation. By primogeniture, by the senior line, the better claim belonged to Laenor, for his mother Rhaenys was the only child of the king's eldest son. But by proximity, by nearness in the male line, the lords favored Viserys, a grandson of the king through his sons, and a prince who had ridden Balerion himself. The Black Dread, the very dragon of the conqueror, until that great beast died. The Maesters never published the true count of that vote, but it was whispered through the realm that Viserys had won by something near 20 votes to 1. Rhaenys' support had been little more than her own people, the Velaryons and their neighbors of the Bay, and the Baratheons of her mother's house. And so, a second time, her line was passed over. A second time, the throne turned away from the senior blood and toward the male. But this great council did more than wound one woman's pride. In the eyes of the realm, it set an iron precedent, a rule written in the choosing of a king. The Iron Throne, men now said, could not pass to a woman, nor to the male descendant of a woman. Mark that well, for it is the bitterest thread in Rhaenys' whole story. That very rule, the rule forged to deny her, would one day be turned against another princess, against Rhaenyra. the daughter of the very Viserys who had beaten her son. And when that day came, Rhaenys, the woman the Precedent had ruined, would take her place at Rhaenyra's side and fight to tear it down. This was the moment that fixed her name in the histories. The woman who, by right, should have been the first ruling queen of Westeros, and twice was not. The queen who never was. The years that followed brought her no peace, only the slow, terrible business of outliving her own children. Her daughter Laena had grown into one of the most powerful dragon riders of the age, for she rode the great Vhagar, oldest and largest of all living dragons. She was wed at last to Prince Aemon Targaryen, the king's restless brother, and the two of them flew their dragons across the narrow sea to the free cities. In Pentos, in 116 AC, Laena bore demon twin daughters, Baela and Rhaena, granddaughters of Rhaenys. But in 120 AC, at the family seat of High Tide, Laena came to childbed once more, and the labor went wrong. The babe, a son, did not live, and a fever took Laena soon after. They say she tried to die as a dragon rider should, dragging herself toward Vhagar one last time, and collapsed before she reached her. So passed Rhaenys' daughter. And in that same year, that same cursed year of 120, her son died too. Laenor had wed the Princess Rhaenyra herself, joining the Velaryon and Targaryen blood, and together they had 3 sons, Jaehaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey. Yet the whole realm whispered the truth that one look at the boys made plain. They were brown of hair and broad of feature, not silver Velaryons at all. And men said openly that their true father was Rhaenyra's lover, Sir Harwin Strong. Rhaenys surely knew the boys were not truly of her son's blood. And then Laenor himself was killed at a fair in Spicetown on Driftmark, struck down by a man named Qarl Corry. It was called a sudden quarrel between them, but it was widely believed to have been arranged, so that the newly widowed Rhaenyra might be free to wed Prince Aemon, which she did within the year. So in the span of a single year, Rhaenys buried both of her children, her daughter to the childbed, her son to a blade. All that remained of her living legacy were her granddaughters Baela and Rhaena, and 3 boys who, by the worst-kept secret in the realm, did not carry her blood at all. And yet, when that secret was challenged, she stood with her family to the death. In 126 AC, old Corlys fell gravely ill of a fever, and the question rose of who would inherit Driftmark, for both his children were in their graves. By strict law, it should have fallen to the eldest of Rhaenyra's boys, but one of Corlys's own nephews, Sir Vaemond Velaryon, stood up at court and said aloud what everyone whispered. The boys were no Velaryons, he declared, but the bastards of Harwin Strong, and the true blood of the house was his. He called Rhaenyra an adulteress and her sons baseborn to the whole assembled court. He did not live long after. At Rhaenyra's command, Daemon took the head from his shoulders, and Vaemon's kin who went to King's Landing seeking justice had their tongues cut out instead, so that the realm thereafter called them the Silent Five. Lucerys was confirmed as heir to Driftmark, and the matter was buried in blood and silence. Rhaenys lived through all of it, and never broke faith with the cause, though she of all people knew the truth of those boys' blood. Her loyalty in the end was not to a bloodline. It was to the alliance, and to the woman the throne had wronged, as it had once wronged her. And then, in 129 AC, the old order died, and the dance began. King Viserys passed in his sleep, and his death was kept hidden for the better part of a week, while the Queen, Alicent Hightower, and her faction, the Greens, moved in secret to seize the crown for her son Aegon. instead of the rightful heir, Rhaenyra. They crowned Aegon in the Dragon Pit, that vast brick dome upon the hill of Rhaenys, chosen for its strong walls and its room to hold a mighty crowd. How great that crowd truly was, the histories cannot agree. Grand Maester Munkun, drawing on the records, claims more than 100,000 small folk packed the pit and shook its walls with their cheering. The fool Mushroom sneers that the benches were barely half full. Sir Criston Cole set the conqueror's crown upon Aegon's brow, and the realm had its usurper king. Rhaenys was not in that city. She was upon Driftmark, the seat of her husband's house, when the word came of the king's death and the Green's treason. And the moment she understood what had been done, she did not wait to be taken. She climbed upon the Red Queen and flew straight for Dragonstone to carry the news to Rhaenyra herself. The shock of it, the death and the betrayal both at once, sent the pregnant queen into an early and terrible labor that brought forth a stillborn daughter, whom Rhaenyra named Visenya. Some fateful prices are paid in silence. On Dragonstone, Rhaenys took her place upon the Black Council, Rhaenyra's war council in exile, and old Corlys with her. Their Velaryon fleet would close the gullet and choke the trade of King's Landing, and Rhaenys upon Meleys would fly above the ships to keep the Green's dragons from them. And after the boy Lucerys was killed in the skies over Storm's End, the spark that lit the open war, the grieving, raging Rhaenyra gave the prosecution of that war over to Rhaenys and Corlys. The old queen who never was had become one of the great dragon riders of the Black's cause, and the most experienced warrior among them. Which brings us, at the last, back to Rook's Rest. Sir Criston Cole, hand to King Aegon, and the man they called the Kingmaker, had marched a host through the Crown Lands, bending the loyal houses to his king. He laid siege to Rook's Rest, the seat of House Staunton, sworn to Rhaenyra. But the siege was bait, for hidden and waiting were two dragons, King Aegon upon golden Sunfire, and his brother Prince Aemon upon monstrous old Vhagar, the very beast that had once been Laena's, lying in ambush for whatever dragon flew to the castle's aid. When Lord Staunton's plea reached Dragonstone, it was Rhaenys who answered. 9 days after his raven flew, the Red Queen appeared alone above Rook's Rest, and Rhaenys loosed her dragonfire upon Criston's army, burning his men and shattering his ranks in a fury. And then the trap closed. Sunfire and Vhagar rose into the sky behind her and fell upon the old woman and her dragon. She knew in that moment that she could not win. 2 dragons against 1, and one of them the largest in the world. She could have run. She turned to meet them instead. Swift and savage to the very end, Meleys closed her jaws upon Sunfire's neck and tore at the golden dragon, wounding king and beast so badly that one of Sunfire's wings would hang half-severed, and Aegon himself would be left a burned and broken invalid for a year. But then Vhagar came down upon them from above, and all 3 dragons crashed together to the earth in a single ruin. Aemon and Vhagar rose from the wreckage unscathed. The Red Queen was broken and torn to pieces by the fall, and Rhaenys died there, her blackened body found beside the carcass of her dragon, in the same place. Never crowned, never running, fighting 2 dragons at once. The histories disagree on much of her, as they disagree on all the dance. Septon Eustace, who loved the Greens, the fool Mushroom, who loved Rhaenyra and lied as freely as he breathed, and Grand Maester Munkun, who came after and gathered the records, tell her tale with different weight and different sympathy. They quarrel over how full the dragon pit was at Aegon's crowning, over how many died beneath Meleys' wings, over whether her last stand was a hero's choice or an old woman's doom. They quarrel over nearly everything. But on the shape of the end, they do not quarrel at all. She answered a cry for help she did not have to answer. She faced an ambush she could have fled. And she paid for it with her life, crippling the enemy king as she fell. Her blood did not die with her. Through her lost daughter Laena, her granddaughters Baela and Rhaenyra survived the war. Baela wed her cousin Lord Alan Velaryon and carried Rhaenys' blood on into the house of the Seahorse, into the line of the Velaryons that came after. The throne that was twice denied to her in life was never to be hers, nor her grandchildren's, yet her blood endured the burning of the dance and outlasted the men who had passed her over. So was she a hero, a monster, or the queen who never was? She was no monster. That much the histories allow. She was a woman robbed twice of a crown that was hers by every right, who in the end was given the chance to flee an ambush and chose instead to die in the sky, like the warrior queen she was never permitted to be. The first ruling queen of Westeros, in all but the crowning. Let the histories speak, and let them call her what she earned. The queen who never was. From her first breath to her last. That was Rhaenys Targaryen.